Hey, I've got another video for you guys today. Someone was requesting a follow-up on a pretty old video, actually. One of my first videos. Actually, might have been my first video. And that is to do some adjustment on the Gamo custom action trigger. By the way, I finally figured out a good way to put a sling on this. So I just loop it around the back. It's an Allen sling. And then I literally just drilled a hole in the cocking arm. It's actually pretty solid steel, so if you want to do that, make sure you have a good sharp drill bit. But yeah, I've shot it. It's still strong enough. It doesn't bend. It hasn't snapped or anything. So if you want to do that, I haven't had any problems with it. And I mean, it works fine. It looks pretty sleek. But yeah, let's get into it. So some red flags are probably going off right now because this is not a custom action trigger. But something that I wish was more common knowledge is that most brake barrel triggers and even a lot of PCP triggers are very, very similar to each other to the point where the sears are almost interchangeable on most triggers. Now, that doesn't mean that your $2 Crossman trigger and your $30 custom action trigger are going to be the same. They're not. The parts are similar, but a custom action trigger has tighter tolerances. It has a couple extra parts in there. It's more adjustable. It has a better blade. The housing is better. There's not as much friction, but just the core parts are the same. So this will still work. So what we have here is, you see, we have our top sear right there. And so this guy engages with the piston catch. And then you also have your secondary sear, which is moving just above the front pin. And so these two will rub against each other, and then when you pull the trigger, that will drop. So someone wanted me to demonstrate how I get rid of creep. And there's two ways to do this. Number one is to grind right there. Number two is to grind the bottom piece, that secondary sear. So we're going to take this apart, and I'm going to show you what you can do to these pieces. Okay. Before we go any further, I do just want to mention this. This will not decrease the free play of your trigger. If your trigger blade flops around like this before you have any actual take-up and engagement of the sears, this is not going to fix that problem. This is going to shorten your first stage of your trigger. So you need to recognize during your trigger pull, am I actually engaging the sears right now, and are they sliding across each other? If so, this will shorten that stage. And so all you want to do is you just want to come in literally on the grinding wheel here and just go whoop and just take a little bit off. Or if you want to work on the bottom one, you just come in from this direction and cut on this face. I prefer to do the top piece because the top piece is at a right angle and it's straight edged. On the bottom here, this is a straight edge. So we're not going to be changing any angles. Whereas on this guy, you see we have this curved surface here, which is meant to help with your second stage, your over travel, and your reset a little bit. So messing with this will potentially change up how different other parts of your trigger pull behave. So another thing is you can also do this on files. I don't know if I showed you guys this. I made my own file stand the other day and it came out really well. So I'm going to do it on the grinding wheel because I've done this several times and I'm pretty confident. So I'm just going to get the camera set up and then I'll do this. Safety glasses are a must for sure. And really you just want to go real slow on this. And I just like to come in on the side here. And so you can see that was pretty messy. That didn't really give me a good angle, because I obviously haven't done this probably since the last time I made that video. But so I'm going to go hit that again. You know what? You know what my issue here is? This grinding wheel has worn down out of a right angle, which is why it's giving me that weird angle. So I'm going to switch to the other side. Okay, that's a bit better. And so what you want to make sure of is that the sparks you see coming off are coming off the side of the wheel, not the front, because like you can see here, when the sparks come off the front, you're going to be wearing on this surface, which if you decrease this surface, you're going to be increasing the amount of engagement you have, which is going to have other unintended effects. So I'm actually going to go and clean this up and get it exactly how I want it on a file, probably a triangular file right here. And I'm just going to do that by hand real quick, and once I'm done, I'll show you guys. Okay, so I got that all filed up. I actually had to use 2 files and a Dremel because I really messed up on the grinding wheel, not knowing that that was a kind of rounded off. It doesn't matter though, this trigger is just an extra, it doesn't get used. So I'll show you here. I almost went too far, but you can see, and I didn't put it back together properly either, of course, but you can see there's now just quite a bit less engagement there. So basically what that does is this secondary sear doesn't have to move as far until before the primary sear drops and lets the piston shoot forward. So it's a pretty basic thing, but just make sure you're making the right call, because you could be trying to fix the wrong problem here. So just make sure that you have too much engagement on those sears. Otherwise, you'll want to mess around with the engagement on your trigger to your secondary sear, which is on the CAT. There's an adjustment screw. Typically, I like to have that all the way in. Or one other thing I like to do in certain situations is grind the engagement surface between the top sear or the primary sear and the piston. So like this little tooth sticking up right there, I like to grind that back edge a little bit. Or also that flat sticking way forward. This guy I will sometimes grind, or even potentially add material to. Add some shim stock, or if you solder, you can add some solder to it to decrease the amount of engagement that you have with the piston, in order to have a little bit less dwell time, I guess you could say. But just be real careful with that if you decide to do that, because that is, the more material you add to this surface and the less engagement you have on your primary sear, the more dangerous your gun becomes. So I really hope this helped anybody who needed it. Yeah.